Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. I'd like to call upon my panelists, starting with Mohammed, Jose, and Varmate, and Roman. Please, make yourself on stage. Good, my friend. Please. Hello. Nice to meet you, mate. Sorry for the accent. I'm from New Zealand, actually, so it's the Kiwi in me. Morning. All right. It's a great panel because beyond talking about agriculture and many technologies in the Middle East, we talk about a very important subject, which is money, capital, supporting all of that and what we are trying to achieve in this region. So a bit about me. What I'm going to kind of do is I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to pass on to my fellow colleagues, and they can all do a 1-minute introduction, quick introduction for the audiences. So my name is Amit Grover. I'm from New Zealand. I run an IP strategy practice and a single family office. So I've been around for a while, and passing on, please.
Thank you so much, and it's my pleasure to be here. I would like to thank the organizer of this beautiful conference, because they are the one who are breaking down and building a bridge between investors, AgriTech company. My name is Muhammad Umar Rabbani. I'm MSc Horticulture, Certified Global Gap Farm Assurer, Registered Project Management Professional, and Lead Green Associate. Right now, I'm working with Arid Group, and before I used to work with Abu Dhabi Agriculture and Food Safety Authority and Abu Dhabi Farmer Services Center. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jose Fernandez. I'm living in Dubai the past 16 years. And the project that brought me here, I was co-founder and CEO, so I come with a background as co-founder and CEO in the food ingredients industry. I combine this activity as an investor in different projects. I'm very much involved in the ecosystem in Europe, in the Middle East, and in the US. And then I have another hat that is as a board and advisory board member in different organizations, all of them linked and representing different stages within the food value chain. Yeah, happy to be here.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Womit Joan Sidikio. I work as the founder of the AFCFTA Roundtable, connecting businesses, connecting entrepreneurs, connecting small businesses across Africa. I also work as vice president of the All Africa Association for Small and Medium Enterprises. And together we are building an ecosystem of small businesses, trying to create a platform for businesses to do export across Africa and across the world. And thirdly, I'm also Director General of the Yenagoa Chamber of Commerce, a sub-regional chamber of commerce in Nigeria. And so in all three of these, what we're doing is working with small businesses, creating a platform for them to do a lot of export and grow through the process, especially in Nigeria and across Africa. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Raman Ulyanov. I'm CEO and the founder of a company called Greeneration. Greeneration is a chain of vertical farms located here in UAE, where we grow premium and rare ingredients like edible flowers, specialty leaves. Recently we started growing cucumbers. Hopefully you will test them and try them soon. We work with all the best restaurants, hotels, caterers, and recently started working with some retail chains as well. My background, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I was doing different businesses for a while. But originally I started in investment field. I was an investment banker doing private equity and venture capital, focusing on M&As and other sectors other than agriculture. But that background helped me a lot in raising funds to develop a very interesting project here, Greeneration. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Super. We've got a stellar panel. Let's jump into it. My first question is to you, Mohammed. Investments in agri-tech, I mean, this is a much talked about subject across the Middle East and the topic of many discussions. How do you think investments in agri-tech, number one, builds climate resilience, again, in the context of MENA, and, and how does it benefit the agriculture sector as we see it today?
I mean, when we are talking about Middle East or MENA region, so MENA region has significant importance while we are talking about food security, food sustainability, sustainable agriculture, logistics, supply chain. And the groups which are working on agriculture, they have a core objective to work in this region. Because 60% of the MENA population is living on water scarcity and non-arable land. And that 60%, if we compare to the whole world, so it will become 35% of the whole population. So 35% of the whole population is living on a water scarcity area. So when we are talking about agriculture in this region, so it's really hard to agriculture companies that has to work on sustainable agriculture. If I would take you to 90s, in 90s there was no any agriculture industry, especially in Gulf region. But right now, I must say that I can say proudly that we have agriculture industry which have 5 to 7% of annual compound growth rate, which is the good rate for any industry. So basically in MENA region, as I'm grower, I have seen that we have a three biggest challenge. Number one is water. In MENA region, we have a scarcity of water, we have a saline water, but I'm really thankful to AgriTech companies so that they give us a solution of RO plant, or reverse osmosis plants, to grow and to clean the water, to make that salinity less, and we would be able to grow agriculture commodities here. And also, second one is the biggess challenge is our soil. Soil is not fertile here. Majority of the soil is not fertile. So they give us a solution of hydroponic system, soilless, or biostimulant or fertilizers now available, so we can enhance the soil fertility as well. And the third one, and the biggest one, is the climate issue. We have sometime temperature fluctuate until 45 degrees centigrade and 50 degrees centigrade, so we are not able to grow in that. So we have right now technology of high-tech technology, low-tech. We have greenhouses, net houses, low-tech technologies. So right now, with that investment and with that innovation, we are able to grow our agriculture commodities here in Middle East and Africa.
Super. Moving on to you, Jose. You've obviously been a thought leader in the agriculture and the food sector in the Middle East. And we've also had many conversations on that from time to time. In your approach, what's the best way, in your opinion, to have tangible food secured region, which means food security both on an institutional level and a consumer level? What are the different approaches that you think really works?
Very good question, Amit. I'll try to be practical on this, right? So if you think about any development in a system, in a closed system, for example, talking about a development in plants, you might think, okay, we need soil to understand the soil, we need to understand what are the nutrients, we need to understand the environment, right? This environment means context, and when we are talking about food security and national food security in the UAE and regionally, I think this context is ecosystem. So we need to have an ecosystem that is really cohesive, that it's really meant to bring talent or to train that talent on the real goals. We need to have resources. We need to have a structural funding that goes the right way, because there are areas that are not, yet profitable for the private capital, right? So there must be an assessment on which one are those areas, and then, for example, initiatives like the Khalifa University and Dr. Fadi is leading, right? So it's very important to have this sort of projects where profit it's more driven by self-sustainability rather than benefits, right? So you want to have a tool that is contributing for the ecosystem to thrive. So then, having said that, I would say, obviously, it's a combination of efforts from the public sector, from the government and so on, efforts from the private sector, obviously corporates that are in a better fit to contribute to this, and then obviously the startup innovators, academia, and so on. So in that regard, and after being 16 years here, I'm seeing progress, right? So there is a food cluster being created recently. It's under the Ministry of Economy. I'm, proud to be part of it, right? And especially on the knowledge hub of it. So this is starting to do some steps. Obviously, it's not at the pace that we all want, but obviously you have that element that at least it's bringing together meaningful discussions and, more importantly, some actions, right? But I don't know if that answered entirely your question, but in short, for me, is that ecosystem has to be nurtured, yeah? And the collaboration, we don't want to reinvent the wheel here, right? So there is learning from others' mistakes. So we want to learn from others as well, and opening the doors for others to come with their solutions, I think it's also a good approach.
No, great. I mean, there's no one answer to food security. I think it's a bunch of stakeholders who come together and achieve that. Going a bit away from the Middle East and coming into Africa, because Africa is a very strong partner for multiple countries in Africa for the Middle East. So Mamate, in your opinion, structurally, what are the challenges that you see in financing where a lot of African businesses, agribusinesses face an increasing barrier to accessing foreign markets and accessing climate-smart innovation that basically makes it more competitive compared to the rest of the world? So what's your opinion on it?
Well, thank you very much, Amit. I'll basically try to create some sort of context in this first. We understand Africa as 1.4 billion people, and as we speak, there are about 570 million smallholder farmers across the world by statistics of the Food and Agricultural Organization. Now, about 70–80% of that are under 2 hectares, and you have 30% of that in Africa. That's huge. And then if you flow back to Nigeria, Africa has about 60% of non-cultivated arable land all over the world, and that's huge as well. Now, come down a bit, you'll discover that much of what is food security issues are in Africa based on climate issues, for instance, in areas of crisis and all of that. And then the third context is to see that Africa also has the great issues of food loss and food waste. And that if you now knit these three together, you'll see a critical problem. But again, the issue is when we talk about financing agribusiness in Africa, the key question would now be, what exactly to finance? Are we financing production? Are we financing resilience? And that's where Africa's next issues are going. Now, in financing smallholder farmers to be resilient, to be able to export, to access finance exactly, where do they get the monies from? And that's why how to mobilize capital for AgriTech becomes very essential. Now, you have a lot of small businesses that are actually into AgriTech, and you have technology that is growing. For instance, in Kenya and in Nigeria, in a few other places, you have small businesses that are actually mobilizing capital. The first thing is that small businesses have this challenge of not being two things, not being formal in the market area, so they're not recognized to be able to access formal capital. The second bit is they are seen as not having credit history. So these are the core areas, for instance, that mobilizing capital, extra commercial capital comes in very key. And so in two key areas, you discover that people are doing, helping these businesses create data and information that helps them access funding, both formally and informally. So going forward, for instance, also, in my organization, like the All Africa Association for Small and Medium Enterprises, what we've done is create what we call the Ubuntu Susu Fund, which is like, Ubuntu is more like a community, and is like crowdfunding that is outside of the formal banking arrangement to ensure that all of the challenges that small businesses face, whether in production or in export businesses, are taken care of. So that is one key area of doing basically crowdfunding, crowdfunding to be able to mobilize small businesses, especially in AgriTech, to ensure that they are resilient and they also lose that structural disadvantage that is affecting small businesses in Africa.
No, it's a very, very valid point. In fact, early this year at the World Economic Forum, I got the pleasure of meeting a couple of very senior Indian finance ministry people. And in terms of microfinance to farmers, I mean, if you look at the default rate, it's mind-boggling, because the people who actually do the maximum default are these corporates. Small farmers and small medium cottage industries, they've got the maximum repayment rate, almost 98%. So that's key to kind of accessing agriculture growth in those areas. Roman, coming to you, you've obviously built a very impressive chain of vertical farms in the UAE. What made you believe that the region is ready and kind of ready for this level of ag tech investments?
Thanks, Amit. Back in 2022, when I was considering where to expand my business, like beyond Eastern Europe, I was looking at all the markets and was trying to find a spot where I could find a relatively cheap electricity and a very dynamic market in the segment where we historically were quite active. Hospitality, restaurants, all this stuff. So Dubai, and like UAE and Dubai in particular back then, was one and only right choice, because Europe electricity price since 2022 were, rised to the hell. In North America, there are their own champions. Africa, not much going on in hospitality. I mean, the CAGR is not so huge. Southeast Asia is interesting, and there are a lot of friends from Southeast Asia currently in the audience, and we do some interesting business with them there too. But for me, like Arab culture was more understandable, so I picked Dubai based on two main trends, right? First, the growth of hospitality sector, double digits over the last 5 years, and I think it will continue going forward. Plus, the readiness of the institutions. I mean, the level of doing business, like index of level doing business in UAE is really high. You face a lot of support from the government when it comes to opening the business, explaining you how to get a license, different acceleration programs, and to the point of Jose, ecosystem here is amazing. I mean, there are a lot of founders who are willing to help, founders who already get to the success, like, I know, Pew Harvest and many, many other founders. Moreover, here, national food security is not a buzzword. It's a real agenda, right? Especially after the COVID-19, when the border was closed, supply chain, cold chain was destroyed or damaged. And for the country where you import 90% of the food, is extremely important to finally grow something locally. And for us, we initially decided not to, come and approach all the segments and grow everything for everyone, right? We picked a very specific niche, very high marginal, edible flowers, specialty leaves, and microgreens for the high-end restaurants, with a very simple idea to show and prove that you could build sustainable, financially sustainable unit economics on a vertical farm, and then leveraging this success, expand beyond these niche produce. And so far, I think we're doing a good job, like, again, cucumbers and some other produce, and this product could really contribute to the national food security agenda. Because obviously you can feed the nation with microgreens, right? But you could do the same with other products.
Great, great. And I think, as we see the emergence of, vertical farming, aquaponics, hydroponics, and some of these technologies making their way, we are definitely looking at a very different future from here on. Coming back to you, Mohammed, simple question. This is a question very dear to my heart because I work on this the entire day as my profession. But what are the barriers to capital investment in climate smart agriculture in the MENA region?
The biggest barrier everywhere you can say, or simply everyone might know that it's the financing, especially in agriculture. And we have the witness of so many big fishes of control environment agriculture or indoor vertical farming, which has shut it down their businesses from last couple of years. This is not just because of that technology is not working or they have some, but there are some things that things are they don't have that much financing to run. The operational cost is higher. Always I have seen when you say that we are growing something in Middle East or especially in the Gulf region, even the production cost of the agricultural products like cucumber, tomato, lettuces, edible flowers, green ration is also growing, which is also new innovations. But the production cost I have seen, especially in indoor vertical farming, is relatively high. So once we have operational cost is high, when we are going to sell our produce in the market, we are getting less price. So that is the big challenge we are facing in agriculture industry, especially when we are seeing that we are going to launch new technology or we are building a new investment in agriculture. Also, we don't have that much finance to operate that the farms. So these are the big barriers.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. And I think I was discussing the same topic on another panel. And I think the answer really is blended finance, where you're looking at multiple stakeholders coming in and pooling their resources. So you've got the sovereign wealth funds at one end, you've got the institutional banks on the other end, and then the mid-markets, which is pretty much private equity, venture capital, angel investment. So I think it's blended models of financing. That's the answer. Moving on to a very, very interesting question, Jose. You and me have both been extensively at food conferences, agriculture conferences, AgriTech, food science conferences. In a region that we are sitting in that consumes the amount of livestock it does, why aren't we talking about precision livestock farming? I mean, I wonder why.
Well, actually, very good question. This is probably the only conference that I have seen on that topic or touching that topic, right? And it's really, really interesting because animal protein, it's one of the main, sources of protein, not only here in the world, but especially here when you have these extreme climate conditions and so on. It's where technologies and all these efficiencies are making a big difference. So I think it's answering to your question. So probably this has been managed in a different, track as something very, very strategic, as an asset that it's actually kind of protected. But now, both companies and even let's say the institutions, the government, and so on, they are realizing that there are a lot of technologies that can really bring more efficiencies. It can really bring this dimension of making it sustainable or as sustainable as possible, because again, we are in a region where many things are not going to be entirely sustainable, right? So we have to be aware of that and then address that challenge, with the means and with the resources that we have. So answering to your question, probably for me is, I think we are in the right time. We are in a sort of revolution happening at all levels across the food value chain. So coming out from the pandemic made us all aware of how vulnerable is the food system. and then how important, how critical it is. I always say that the food business is everyone's business, right? So, and there is a lot of dimensions to that statement. But well, I think we will see increasingly more, verticalized or more specialized events and content that will be bringing more talent on the different topics. And yeah, I think this is a trend that just started, right? So, and if you think about all the areas that are involved in that, like animal feed, cattle feed, diseases, we were talking about animal health and so on. So it's really endless. So, and this is also an opportunity for the ecosystem to thrive and to build new diversions to it.
Absolutely, spot on. And I think, like the previous panel was talking about cellular agriculture being on the borderlines of technology and innovation and adoption. I think it's going to drive 5-10 years from now, you're going to see that mainstream in the way it kind of picks up, especially in regions like this. Moving on to you, Varmate, I think partnerships are pretty much pivotal for Africa to be able to both source capital and technology. So what, in your opinion, the role that regional partnerships will play both in accessing financing and accessing technology transfer to be able to make African farmers and African agriculture more competitive globally?
Thank you, Amit. Again, I think I'll also just pull back to existing structures, especially in Africa, that helps leverage this kind of partnership. When we talk about MENA anyway, the NA in MENA is actually North Africa, but of course they're also part of the structures, for instance, in the AfCFTA, that is pushing a lot of all of this to be drive common architecture for financing and also for food security. So between MENA and the rest of Africa, that can happen, especially leveraging on the AfCFTA and the offshoots of other institutions around the AfCFTA, for instance, Afreximbank and the AFDB, that help in creating this ecosystem. So functionally, the MENA can actually work with the rest of Africa in enabling this to happen. Also outlining efforts by small and private organizations, institutions, and also keying into the issues of blended financing to ensure that happens. So it is very, it's workable, it's in progress. You have lots of partnerships already in the private sector that is helping to key into the vision of the AfCFTA and driving this to happen in the shortest possible time. Fantastic.
I think the great answer. Looking at the future, Roman, I mean, obviously you've got experience in investment banking on the capital side, and now, considerable experience in AgTech. What do you think in the next 5 to 10 years, the areas that are going to be the biggest growth opportunities for all classes of investors, not just limited to the large institutions or the large sovereign wealth funds, but even smaller investors, in your opinion? What are going to be the growth areas?
Well, this is a great question, and I'm obviously thinking about it a lot, because we want to expand beyond just farming, right? And considering the rapid development of artificial intelligence, I think we may see a lot of momentum in segments like biotech and development of mushrooms, one of my favorite topics. Data, everything around data, and I think modules that could smartly help distribute the produce and aggregate the volumes from the farmers, like NinjaCart in India and projects like that. These segments, in my view, will drive the value in upcoming years. Again, leveraging the new technology and approaches. By the way, one more thing that I'm currently exploring is about HVAC, like heat ventilation and air conditioning systems. like from practical example, at the farm, like in one growing module, we could have like 100,000 different plants. Can you imagine, like 100,000 little babies, and agronomists are taking care of them on a daily basis. So these plants, they are live, right? And sometimes the development of these plants deviate from the technology maps, right? They could drink more, exhaust more oxygen and stuff like that. Obviously, this creates some dynamics in the ventilation model, right? So you may require more volume to work on and stuff like that. So it was very challenging to calculate the right parameters and make sure that the climate you prepare in the room is up to the mark. With mushrooms, this situation is even worse. It's even more challenging. So what we currently do, we run lots of modules and exploring edge cases to make sure that, let's say, if we shift the assortment in the growing area, our climate still manage the new assortment inside the growing area. So I do believe that in climate management, we'll see new solutions as well, more energy efficient and more smart.
In my opinion, I think the two areas that we have to look at, which is going to be pivotal, number one is the carbon economy. I mean, that's coming up big, both in terms of carbon sequestration, carbon exchanges, and carbon tax. That's going to be absolutely mainstream, driving wealth. Number two, like we talk about data centers in the UAE mining data, I think there is an growing appetite in the world to mine gene data from most crops and livestock. That's going to be pivotal to producing agriculture in the way that technology is kind of headed. Coming back to you, Mohammed, and building on the same question, where do you think in the UAE the governments and institutions can play a role in driving private capital to AgriTech?
I would say that I'm really proud that we are in UAE because the agriculture system in UAE is really fantastic. I used to work with Abu Dhabi Farmer Services Center. What they were doing, they were facilitating the farmer from seed sowing, farm building, till harvest, and after that, they take that produce, and marketing also has been done from Abu Dhabi Farmer Services Center. So all other countries, they should learn from that. The UAE government is working on food security, food sustainability. Right now, EDAFSA is also working on that sustainable project. Silal is there. So if these kind of organization, I would say in other countries also they are working, so the local farmers or the small farmers, they should have the prosperity for that. And the public-private funding is always top priority in agriculture sector. So government here in UAE government, especially I would say in Dubai, Sharjah, Abu Dhabi, they are playing a very important role to support the farmers for the prosperity of the farmers. They are giving subsidized seeds, subsidized fertilizer to prosper the farmers.
Great. Jose, coming to you, and just quickly, briefly, can you, in your opinion, list technologies that are really working to be able to achieve food security? Not something that promises to, but in the current context, what, in your opinion, are the technologies that are really working towards food security in the region?
Wow, this is, look, in the previous panel, many of our colleagues were talking about, different technologies that are already making a big impact, right? For example, the drones, right? Computer vision, right? So you can now spray just the plants that has specific needs, as an example. In the precision livestock farming, you have similarly many different elements that can, from diagnose to really bring some sort of treatments, right? And more importantly, we are seeing technologies that are enabling the upcycle of different waste streams. And I will stop here for a minute in one project that I am mentoring right now, two veterinarians that are researchers in a European university in Lisbon. So they are professors, right? But they decided to go through this program of the European Union with public funding as well as private, so PPP model. And what they are doing is, as an example, just extracting the ruminal fluids and isolating some bioactive compounds out of it. So they are treating a waste stream, so that otherwise it would be wasted. And then from that bioactive compounds, they can formulate ingredients that are really solving some problems for the cattle farming, right? So let's say the iterations that we will see are endless. Probably the challenge, as you mentioned, is market readiness. And again, I have zero doubt that we will see 5, 10 years down the road a completely different food system, zero doubts. Now the problem is some regions, some geographies, some countries will go way faster than others. But now with implementation, for example, of AI, the other day I was also discussing with a researcher that is working in a big food corporation. He was telling me, Jose, we are right now implementing AI tools across the whole value chain, right? You cannot imagine. And I say, I imagine because I am one of the investors in this one or in this other one. So really, it's the market readiness for me, it's a bit overvalued. We need to give them the chance. We need to really embrace that innovation. And one of the audience was also before, it's totally right, he was mentioning, look, the farmers, we have a lot of challenges ourselves to pay the bills, to grow this, to fight with the climate or whatever. So we cannot be trained on everything, right? Of course you cannot, but that's why the ecosystem has to play their role, right? So you have to have, for example, services that are delivered by third parties, but that really takes care of this and train them to a certain extent to be able to implement those technologies. So another example you were mentioning with the support that Abu Dhabi government is, it's giving to more than 25,000 farmers only in Abu Dhabi. Can you imagine? So, and many of these farmers, they know as a fact that they are not going to be commercially viable because we are in an environment where food security and food sovereignty is the main driver. So it doesn't mean that you need to export these foods, but at least you cover some of them from the pool of local needs. You cover some of them, right? And Roman is in a different context, which is a different opportunity as well. So he's bringing added value products that are grown locally, but these added value products can be also explored in other dimensions. For example, some bioactive compounds, some other, nutritional elements that maybe are not a reality today, they are not at the scale today, but later on could be processed. So I think one of the responsibilities for the ones that are in that space is really to try to envision, to embrace that and not to put limits because it's not market ready, right? So it's more to, educate and nurture the whole society also to support on that mission.
No, absolutely. And I think on the question of support and subsidy, I do believe from a purely economics perspective that a country or a sector can't purely be run on subsidy. It's got to be converting from a subsidized ecosystem to a financially sustainable ecosystem. Otherwise, it doesn't have much future. Now, talking about market readiness, my next question is to both of you, starting with Marmate and then to Roman in different contexts. Obviously, Marmate in context of Africa and Roman in context of the UAE. From your experiences, Marmate, what are the main factors that make AgTech businesses in Africa sustainable? And I'm not talking about climate, I'm talking about financially viable and sustainable.
Okay, thank you again, Amit. Two things. Again, first, we understand that Africa is very slow with technology diffusion and adoption. And that also has kept them at the back end of operations when it comes to um, um, sustainability and viability. And so the idea is to basically charge on those key areas to ensure that businesses become very ready, especially export readiness. But before export readiness, they must be viable entities in themselves first. So that is the key approach to what basically is happening in Africa. And then the areas that are affected mostly, or that are actually building on all of this essentially, is much of East Africa and a lot of West African nations that are actually doing a lot of this. And again, what we are also basically pushing is to ensure that as Africans, we succeed in empowering especially our institutions that are driving efforts at market readiness for small businesses, sustainability for the entire ecosystem. And that's why for us, supporting the initiatives of the AFCFTA is very key. Supporting the initiatives of the Afrexim Bank and the AFDB are very important to us as Africans. And so to deal with market readiness essentially is ensure that these businesses pivot into agribusinesses, adopt technology. But again, we must ensure going forward, what percentage of these businesses do we think we can grow in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years? That is a milestone and a framework that we are working on to ensure that businesses are both sustainable in themselves, they are market ready, and they can access finance for export and be export ready as well.
Superb. Taking the same question, Roman, with you in the Middle East context.
Great. I would try to answer these through a case study. To Jose's point, let's say these 25,000 Abu Dhabi's farmers, right? They are doing an important job, but financially it couldn't be always sustainable, right? And at Greeneration, what we recently started doing, we are contacting the farms and approaching them with the idea to manage their facilities. So we basically rent it and using our data to know what we should grow there and to whom we should sell it, right? Like with the cucumbers or with another vertical farm, which initially started growing red daikon, just a microgreen, which was, this microgreen grows 2 days. So if you build a financial model based on that you grow and sell one SKU, it's like a printer for money. But the reality is absolutely different. You can't just grow this one type of microgreen. You should grow a portfolio. So if we talk about these 25,000 farmers, if you have a data and you know what to grow, you could approach them and start growing there, like rent this place, start grow there, crops that you could finally sell. It sounds very simple, but in reality it's very challenging, right? Because market is very dynamic. Let's say in hospitality, one day chefs need these crops, another day they don't. With wedges, situation is more stable, but still challenge is there. So I think whenever you really, really understand what you grow and for whom, you could reach the financial stability. And that makes sense other things like unit economy, delivery, and obviously environmental narrative supports your business case, right? But at first, you really need to understand what you grow and for whom. And I think technology could help here. And next couple of years, I think we'll see more and more projects that start, leveraging the data, try to aggregate existing infrastructure, which really requires some CapEx, but beyond CapEx, it also requires a smarter management.
No, great. So the team, how are we doing on time? Are we out of time or do we still have time? Shweta? We still have time? Super. Okay. So if it's 5 minutes, I'd like to kind of ask a personal question to each of you. starting with Roman and then kind of the chain goes back to me. For mid-market finances, especially for, let's say, venture capitalists that are working under a closed-ended fund structure, and you being from finance, Roman, you understand this, that the pressure on divestiture is very, very high because you've got limited time to make money. And for high net worth individuals investing in a personal capacity who might not have a long distance vision on blocking their capital, how do they finance such models and still make money out of it? I mean, this is taking away the sovereign wealth funds, the institutions, and the large format government organizations that have a very, very long-term vision. Now, all of us are not in the same boat or don't have that kind of capital. So how do we make money?
Very simple, just invest in real estate. Yeah, what I'm trying to say, whenever, let's say here in Dubai, you have opportunities that could generate you 25 ROI, you will just sit on the sofa, right, and waiting when another skyscraper will reach the destination. Having this in mind is very hard to pitch, and I was there, I was doing hundreds of pitches to the just high net worth individuals who is interesting to get a financial exposure, right, to get some money, and that's it. So if you are a professional investor into the agriculture or biotech or food produce, you should understand that the dynamics here is different. You can't see 25x on the revenues, especially in the market it's not the United States, right? So we're not talking about enormous multiples that you could see in AI or something. That's why the appetite should be lower, right? And this knowledge comes with an expertise. If you never ever invested in these projects and invested only in the real estate, then you probably will be disappointed with the potential returns. But if you have a passion and a vision and you really understand why you do this, why it's matter to you, then returns comes on a second place, right? And this is, first of all, this is a journey. Whenever you work with the organic world, it started for me for money, but ended as a journey. And I think this is important to keep in mind. But for VC and high net worth individuals, there are still segments that could generate enormous returns in partnership with the government institutions. Here in the country, I think one of the biggest opportunities, as you said, data centers and genetic banks could be a massive success story. And another one, which I didn't mention, but keeping in mind, seeds breeding. Because we are working with, I guess, more than 300 different seed suppliers. Obviously, we have a short list, 10 to 15 companies where we take most of them. But even with these companies, we're still facing issues with germination rates, poor batches, storage issues and stuff like that. So I think this is another opportunity where the lifespan of the investment, obviously long, but on the market you could find projects that are trying to get to the point for the last 2 or 3 years. So you could jump into the train and see the potential returns in, say, a few years. And returns could be excess.
Great. Vermate, same question, your opinion.
Okay, thank you. Again, I'd also like to create this bit of context. Africa is 54, 55 nations in one. And trying to harmonize structures within such a large population of people and different countries, different policies, different laws is a very, very tedious task. And so that also is part of the challenge in trying to create the structures that help businesses even within the environment. And so finance also becomes that kind of problem. Now going forward, what Africa is working on, by our knowledge and through the AfCFTA, is to ensure, for instance, that structures are collapsed basically under one institution. And then financing can flow quite easily. Now again, under the AfCFTA, you have policies and structures to help small businesses under Afrexim Bank, for instance. structuring the finance in such a way that it creates that harmonized platform for all businesses to be able to access. But how do businesses actually basically make profit, for instance, like you're asking? How do funders, private sector funding, actually flow through and into the system? Do they expect to make money over time under the kind of structures that are available within the continent? Yes. And a lot of businesses are actually doing that. And so, again, I'll flow back down to what we're doing at Ubuntu Susu. It is essentially structured for long-term financing for small businesses, which is one huge challenge for businesses in that area. And not looking at profit sharing, because it's a crowd-funded arrangement where, for instance, we're looking at $1.4 billion flowing through the businesses themselves into a pool. And so it's not about profit in the short term, but more or less profit in the long term. That way, businesses can basically access finance, do business, become resilient, become fully structured under the policies within Africa, and make money in the long term.
Jose, your opinion on the same question?
Very good. So yeah, very good question. I think, see, the agri-food business, it's profitable. So coming back to Roman's question, if you talk about the UAE, the answer is invest, but not in farming. Invest in the adjacencies, right? So you can make some money around. Because the farming is solving a challenge that is actually very strategical, right? Which is the food production. Now, there are huge operations in private equity, for example, investing in super intensive olive trees. I'm talking about 10,000, 20,000 hectares, and they are massively profitable, right? So then they are even more profitable when you integrate different technologies and services, like the monitoring platforms, all the software, and so on. So all the, let's say, precision irrigation, precision agriculture technologies. When you even build infrastructure, then it's asset-backed. It becomes an asset-backed project. So there are multiple ways of looking at it, and it's differing in each region. So these are probably the challenges. But then there are two angles to look at it. So one is value creation, and the other one is returns. So there could be a massive value creation, and in fact, there is a massive value creation if you think about in-country value, employment, and so on and so forth. And then the returns is a decent return. So Harvard professor told me always, make a decent profit decently, right? So that's probably the agriculture.
That's all the time we've got left. I've been told by my moderator. And yeah, any questions the audiences have, we'd love to take it.
As we can see, Jose got the memo about the blue jacket and the black shirt today.
Good morning. My name is Alex from BioAqua Garden. I have a question for Mr. Roman. When you started in UAE, apart from pitching 100 times, how did you get to establish the operations here? Where did you get the capital? What is the best way for new startups to hopefully they establish themselves in UAE or MENA region? Thank you.
This is a great question, and I love to talk about it, but I will try to make it short. First, bring capital from abroad, especially if you do vertical farming. Government entities and like local investors already invest all their monies into the vertical farms, and most of them failed like years ago. So nobody will get you any new money. Secondly, it's very easy to do like the incorporation. This process is seamless. It's very important just to bring the capital abroad and set up a proper relationship with your investors. I think plenty of people are helping doing this in this market, but I don't know where you're from. I did raise monies in your home country, supported with the local data, right? Like the market here is enormous, everything is growing. Neighbors like Saudi Arabia, Oman, and other countries look great as well. So there are a lot of potential in the market, right? And the local capital will, regional capital will follow your first steps, like it happens with us, right? We brought 20 million dirhams in capital to set up the farm, start the brand building, story building is very important. And after that, we started to receive some interest from local reputable firms and companies. And at the end of the day, I think if you want to be successful in this country, you should form an alliance with the right local partner. But do it later. I mean, if you're able to go yourself and prove the market that you are successful, sustainable, at the end of the day, you will get a better deal for yourself.
Brilliant. Thanks, Roman. Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, we are tight on time. So, Amit, thanks so much for a great panel.